The day I found out, I was lying in that hospital bed, weak and terrified. But what truly broke me was the truth that slipped out through a whisper. My husband, the man who swore to love and protect me, had already moved on. The sound of a zipper, soft footsteps in my wardrobe, and the voice of a woman I had never heard before. My heart shattered. It's hard to explain the kind of peace you have when everything feels right in your world. You know the kind, the mundane rhythm of life. The little details you hardly ever notice because they just are. The smell of fresh laundry that fills the house every Sunday. My daughter's laugh echoing from the kitchen while she tries to bake her version of chocolate chip cookies, always too much flour. The sound of my husband's boots on the wooden floor, his steady gait as he comes home after a long day at work. That's how life felt before everything started to crack. We had a routine, my husband and I. I knew the exact way he liked his coffee, and he knew the exact way I liked my evenings. Quiet, calm, with only the soft rustle of pages turning in a book or the distant hum of a movie I wasn't really watching. Our 2 children, Alex and Lily, filled the spaces in between. Alex, our firstborn, was a quiet soul, thoughtful and deep in his ways. Lily, the younger one, a fiery spirit, always challenging, always running headfirst into everything. And then there was me, the center of it all. My role in our family was simple: the caretaker, the nurturer, the keeper of everything. I wore that role like a comfortable old sweater, but like every good story, things don't stay simple forever, do they? It was the fall when I first started to feel off. I brushed it off at first. A little tired, a little run down, nothing major. Maybe I was just getting older. But then the weakness didn't go away. A few weeks passed, and I found myself unable to keep up with the chores. Climbing the stairs to bed felt like I was dragging myself through thick mud. I finally went to the doctor, the words coming out of her mouth still echoing in my head. "It's serious. We need to run more tests." I won't bore you with all the medical jargon that followed. Suffice to say, the diagnosis wasn't good. Something inside of me was failing, something that was going to take more than just rest to heal. I remember the silence of that room, the sterile smell of the hospital, the way my breath caught in my throat as she talked. Everything shifted then. My world felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But the worst part wasn't the illness. No, the worst part was how I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on in my life than I knew. My husband, Tom, had been distant. Just a little at first. Late nights at the office, more time spent working on the weekends, a few too many business trips. His attention was shifting, and I could feel it. But I told myself it was just stress, just the weight of life catching up with him. I had no reason to think otherwise. Then, one day, after I'd been admitted to the hospital, I overheard something that would change everything. I was lying in the hospital bed, the kind of sick that makes your body ache in places you didn't know existed, the kind of sick that makes the whole world feel a million miles away. I had drifted in and out of sleep, my body trying to fight back, but it didn't have the strength. The sound of a door opening made me stir, and I half opened my eyes. There was a soft murmur of voices. Tom's deep baritone and the higher-pitched, unfamiliar voice of a woman. I didn't mean to listen. But when you're in a hospital room with nothing but the hum of machines and the distant sound of footfalls, every little noise feels amplified. I could hear them. Clear as day, even though I pretended to sleep. Tom was talking in a soft voice, almost apologetic, as if trying to soothe someone. But it wasn't his usual comforting tone. It was strained, forced. "Are you sure this is where you want to be?" he asked, and then the woman's voice responded, soft, almost whispering, like she didn't want to be heard. "I'll be fine. Just don't let anyone find out. Not yet. She'll be coming back soon, won't she? You said she was getting better." Tom's voice lowered. "She is. I don't know. I think we should stay here until we know for sure. But it won't be long now, I swear. I couldn't breathe." My mind raced as the truth seeped in. He wasn't talking about me getting better. He was talking about something else. About her. The woman who was hiding in my own home. I wanted to sit up. I wanted to scream. But my body wouldn't cooperate. Instead, I lay there, still and broken, as the reality of what I was hearing crashed over me. Tom, my husband, the man I'd spent my life with, had been lying to me. He hadn't just been distant. He had been living another life. The worst part? The part that left me cold and trembling wasn't just that he was seeing someone else. No. It was that this woman was hiding in my own wardrobe. There was a sick irony in it. All the years I'd spent keeping that wardrobe organized, making sure everything was in its place, that nothing was out of order. And now, in the very space I thought was mine, she was hiding. She was hiding in my closet. And then I heard it. The sound of the zipper. The sound of clothing being moved. A woman's laugh, soft and quiet. I closed my eyes, feeling the tears threaten to fall. But I didn't cry, not yet. Not in that moment. I realized something then, something deep inside me. I might be sick, I might be vulnerable, but I still had control over my life, over my truth, and nobody was going to take that from me. The sound of their voices lingered in the air, echoing in my mind like a cruel lullaby. The soft rustling of fabric, the gentle whisper of deceit. Those sounds marked the final blow to the life I thought I knew. The life I thought I had carefully built, stitch by stitch, with patience and love. I lay there, feeling the weight of everything shift around me. What was supposed to be my healing time, the time when I needed my family the most, had become the breeding ground for betrayal. I should have felt angry, but instead I felt a strange, cold clarity. The woman in my wardrobe was an unspoken symbol. She was the intruder, the lie that had wormed its way into the very fabric of my home. I knew I couldn't stay quiet about this, but at the same time I was still tethered to that hospital bed, helpless, unable to make a single move, unable to confront the people who had betrayed me. The days dragged on like that. I watched the nurses bustle in and out of my room, checked in by my doctor regularly, yet my mind was miles away, fighting a battle of its own. My thoughts kept racing back to that night, to the moments I overheard. What had I heard? Was it possible that I was mistaken? Could I really trust what I had overheard, or was my mind playing tricks on me due to the stress and sickness? But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no room for doubt. I had heard enough to know what was really happening in my home. My children, too young to understand the full gravity of what was going on, had no idea that their father was lying to them. They didn't know that their mother was on the brink of losing everything, including her dignity. They didn't know that Tom had already made plans for life after me, even before I'd been given a fighting chance to survive. It wasn't long before I was well enough to go home. The doctors gave me the green light, but I could tell by their eyes that they weren't completely confident in my recovery. My strength had been fading for weeks, and I was about to leave this sterile room, a place where I'd been held together by wires and machines, and face the real world again. It was a world I no longer recognized. Tom had been visiting me almost daily. His presence had become both a comfort and a constant reminder of the betrayal. He would sit by my bed, talking about the kids, how they were adjusting, how they missed me. But what he never mentioned was the woman, the one who was hiding in my wardrobe, the one who had taken my place when I was too ill to notice. As I stepped into my home for the first time in weeks, I tried to ignore the heaviness in the air. The house felt eerily quiet, as if the silence was waiting for me to confront the truth. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of the kids in their rooms, but there was something off. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The first thing I did was head to the kitchen. It was the heart of the house, after all. The place where everything happened, meals shared, laughter echoed, where life was made. But even in the warmth of that space, something felt wrong. The smell of the coffee was familiar, Yet the way Tom held the cup seemed different. The way he handed it to me, as though he were afraid to meet my gaze, sent a chill down my spine. He knew. I could feel the weight of his guilt in the way he avoided my eyes, in the way he moved about the house as if I were a stranger. But I wasn't ready to confront him just yet. Not until I had all the pieces. Days passed. I went back to my normal routine as much as I could. I cooked the meals, folded the laundry, took care of the kids. I smiled, I laughed, and I did my best to pretend that nothing had changed. But in truth, everything had. I knew something had to be done. But I wasn't going to play into Tom's narrative. I wasn't going to become the victim. I wasn't going to let him rewrite the story of my life without me in it. I began to take small steps. Every night, I would go into the room where the wardrobe stood. It had always been my safe space, the place where I kept my favorite clothes, the ones that made me feel like myself. But now, it felt like a vault, a place where secrets were locked away. I didn't know if Tom had been hiding things in there for weeks, or if the woman was the only one who had used it as a hiding spot. But I wasn't about to let her hide in my own home, behind my own door. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. The anger that had been simmering deep inside me started to bubble over. I marched into that room, opened the wardrobe door, and for the first time, truly searched. The soft rustle of fabric hit my ears like a drumbeat. My heart pounded in my chest as I pulled out every shirt, every dress, until I found what I was looking for. At the back of the wardrobe, carefully hidden beneath layers of my own clothing, was a pile of unfamiliar clothes. Women's clothing, dresses, a coat. I ran my hand over the fabric, feeling the coldness of it all, as if it belonged to someone else, not to me, not in my space. My mind was spinning. I had all the proof I needed. I could confront Tom now, lay it all bare, expose him for the man he had become. But something inside me told me to wait. I wasn't going to react in the heat of the moment. I would wait until I was ready to reclaim what was mine, my home, my family, my dignity. I spent the next few days organizing my thoughts, making plans. But before I could do anything, I needed to have a conversation with the kids. They were the most important thing in all of this. They needed to know the truth, not the lies Tom had been feeding them. That was the hardest part. I sat down with Alex and Lily, both of them looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. They had no idea what had been happening behind closed doors. They had no idea that their father had been lying to them, or worse, that he had betrayed their mother. "Mom, are you okay now?" Alex asked, his voice filled with concern. "I'm okay, sweetie," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was breaking. "But there's something we need to talk about." Lily leaned in, her face full of curiosity. "What's wrong, Mom? You've been so sick. But now you're back, so everything's better, right?" "Not quite," I said, holding her gaze. "There are things you need to know. About Daddy." It was harder than I expected, sitting there explaining the unexplainable to my children. Alex, my quiet, thoughtful son, had always been a thinker. He could sense the undercurrents in the room, even when no one said a word. And Lily, my fiery, impetuous little girl, didn't like silence. She didn't like the weight of the air in our home, as though something had shifted, and not in a good way. "Mom?" Alex's voice was soft, a question he didn't know how to ask. "What about Dad? Is he still going to be here?" It was the hardest question, the one I hadn't wanted to answer. But I owed them the truth. I nodded slowly, trying to steady my voice. "Your father is still here, yes, but things are complicated." Lily crossed her arms, her mouth set in a defiant line. "Complicated how? You're back now, aren't you? Everything's better." "Not yet, sweetheart," I said gently. "There are some things that need to be fixed, things that your father and I have to work through." The silence between us grew thick as they processed my words, the tension hanging in the air. I could see it on their faces, the confusion, the worry. They didn't understand yet. How could they? Their world had been so simple, so full of safety up until now. But as much as I wanted to shield them from the truth, I knew it was time to stop pretending. Tom's lies were no longer just his. They were beginning to touch everyone in our family, and I wasn't about to let them keep living under a false narrative. I didn't confront Tom immediately. I couldn't. My body, still frail from the illness, needed more time to heal. I had to be sharp. I had to be strong. When I finally did confront him, I wanted to make sure I had control. I wasn't going to let him dismiss my pain, or worse, spin the story into one where I was the villain. I had lived in his shadow long enough. I watched him for days, waiting for the right moment. He would come home from work, kiss me on the cheek, ask about the kids, and then disappear into his office. It was as if nothing had changed. But I could see it in his eyes, the way he avoided my gaze. He was waiting for something. He was waiting for me to act, to fall into line. He thought he had time. He didn't. I decided to confront him after dinner, when the kids were tucked into bed. We sat at the table, the warm glow of the kitchen light making everything feel too intimate, too quiet. It was in moments like these, when the world seemed small and contained, that the truth had the most power. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice calm but firm. Tom's fork clinked against his plate. "What's wrong? You're still recovering. Shouldn't you be resting?" I swallowed the bitterness that rose in my throat. He was acting like this was normal, like I was just another sick person who needed to be babied. He hadn't once asked me how I was really doing, not since I came home. "No, Tom, this isn't about me being sick." I leaned forward, catching his eyes. "This is about the truth you've been hiding from me." For a moment, he didn't respond. I could see him tense, his hands frozen around his utensils. But he didn't stop me. He didn't say a word. It was almost as though he was hoping I would back down, that I would be too weak to push forward, but I wasn't weak anymore. I'd had enough. "I know about her," I said quietly, my voice steady. "The woman you've been seeing. The one who's been hiding in my wardrobe." His face went white. For a split second, he looked like a man caught in the act, cornered. Then the mask fell into place. He looked at me, his eyes cool, calculating. "You don't understand," he started, but I didn't let him finish. "No, you don't understand," I interrupted. "I may have been sick, Tom, but I wasn't blind. You've been lying to me. You've been lying to the kids. I heard you, and I saw what you've been doing." He sighed, as if this was just an inconvenience he had to deal with. "I never wanted this to happen, but things just got complicated. I didn't know how to handle it." "You were sick and you didn't know how to handle it?" I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You moved her into our home, into my wardrobe. You didn't think that would hurt me? You didn't think that would destroy everything?" Tom stood up, pacing now, his hands rubbing his forehead. He was trying to think of what to say, trying to make the pieces fit in a way that wouldn't make him look like the monster he was. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, his voice low. I didn't know what else to do. I stood up too, my hands shaking not from fear but from rage. "You didn't know what else to do? You could have talked to me. You could have been honest. But instead you chose to lie to me and our children. You chose to betray me in the worst possible way." Tom took a step toward me, his expression softening, as if he was trying to reason with me. "I didn't know if you'd make it. I thought I had to move on. That's your excuse?" My voice was a whisper now, cold and steady. "You thought I was dying, so you replaced me?" For a moment, the silence stretched between us like an endless chasm. And then he broke. Not in a way I expected. There were no tears, no apologies. Instead, he just stood there, defeated. His shoulders sagged and he shook his head. "I never thought you'd hear that conversation. I never meant for any of this to happen," he muttered, but his words were weak, like a last-ditch effort at saving face. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. The truth was there, staring us both in the face, and there was no pretending anymore. I turned and walked away from him, leaving him standing in the kitchen, defeated, while I went to the living room to collect my thoughts. I didn't need him anymore. I didn't need his excuses, his false remorse. I needed my own strength, my own resolution. The confrontation had been raw, but it was only the first step in what would be a long journey. The kids needed to know the truth, but more than that, I needed to reclaim the narrative. I needed to show them that no one, not even Tom, could take away my voice. The confrontation with Tom wasn't easy. I knew it wouldn't be. The weight of everything we'd built together, all the years, all the moments, they didn't just disappear overnight. But at the same time, the truth had a power of its own, a force that was undeniable. And now that it was out in the open, I wasn't about to hide in the shadows anymore. But as difficult as the conversation with Tom had been, it wasn't nearly as hard as what I had to do next. I had to tell the kids. I knew they would be confused. I knew they would feel torn. After all, Tom was still their father, and I wasn't about to tear that relationship apart. At least, not in the way they might expect. But the lie he'd built around them, the world he'd carefully crafted, had to come crashing down. And as painful as it was for me, I had to give them the truth. I waited until the next morning after breakfast. The kids were seated at the kitchen table, their faces bright with the energy of a new day. Alex was leaning over his homework, quietly focused, while Lily twirled her hair around her finger and hummed. It was the calm before the storm, and in that moment, I almost wished I could turn back time just to hold on to this simple peace. But I couldn't. The truth was there, pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. It needed to be said. "Kids, can you both come sit with me for a minute?" I called softly, my voice trembling more than I wanted it to. They looked up, their faces instantly filled with concern. Alex put his pen down, and Lily stopped twirling her hair, both of them sensing the shift in the air. "What's wrong, Mom?" Alex asked, his voice full of caution. I motioned for them to sit beside me on the couch. "There's something we need to talk about," I began, my heart heavy in my chest. "It's about your father." Lily's eyes flickered to me, confusion coloring her face. "What about Dad? He's been good, right?" I swallowed hard, taking a deep breath. "No, honey. He's been lying to you. To all of us." Alex shifted uncomfortably beside me. "What do you mean, Mom?" I looked at both of them, my gaze steady, but full of the pain I'd been carrying for weeks. "I know you've noticed things were a little different when I was sick. And I know your dad tried to make everything seem like it was okay, but it wasn't. I paused, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "He's been seeing someone else. He lied about it, and he kept it from us. He moved her into our home while I was in the hospital." For a moment, there was silence. Absolute stillness, as though the world had stopped moving. Alex's face paled, his eyes wide. "What do you mean, Mom? Why would he do that?" I could hear the disbelief in his voice, and I felt the same disbelief flood through me all over again. How could this be my reality? How could the man I had trusted, the father of my children, have betrayed us like this? "He thought I was going to die," I said, my voice breaking. "He thought I was gone for good, and he moved on. He didn't have the decency to wait or to be honest. And when I came back, I had to find out like this, that my own husband had been hiding things from me, from us." Lily's small voice broke through the silence, and I saw the confusion, the hurt in her eyes. Is he going to leave us?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. He's not going anywhere, but things are going to change. We have to figure out how to live with the truth now." Alex, who had been quiet up until that point, finally spoke. But why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he just tell the truth from the beginning? I could see the hurt on his face, the way he was trying to reconcile the image of the father he had known with the man who had betrayed us. "I don't know, Alex," I said softly. But sometimes people make terrible choices, and they think they're protecting others when really, they're just hurting everyone. There was a long pause before Lily spoke again, her voice small but determined. "Mom, what are we going to do?" That question, that one simple, heartbreaking question, nearly broke me. I looked down at my hands, which were trembling in my lap. I had spent so many years keeping this family together, trying to hold everything in place. And now, I was trying to rebuild it all. But this time, I had to do it on my own. "We're going to keep moving forward," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I'm going to be okay, and you two will be okay. We will figure this out together, but it starts with the truth, and I need you to know that." The following weeks were harder than I could have imagined. Tom's presence in the house became a constant reminder of what had happened. He would try to sit down with me, to talk about what he'd done, to beg for forgiveness, but I couldn't forgive him yet. Not when everything was so raw, not when the children needed me to be strong, not when they needed me to show them that we could rebuild. Even after everything had been shattered, but as much as I wanted to push him away, to send him packing, I knew I couldn't. The kids needed their father. And even though I had every reason to be angry, I wasn't going to let the bitterness consume me. I couldn't. Instead, I focused on them, on Alex and Lily. I threw myself into making sure they were okay, making sure they felt loved and safe. They had questions, so many questions, and every day felt like I was treading water, just trying to keep them afloat while I fought to stay above the surface myself. But time, as it always does, began to heal. Slowly, little by little, the house began to feel like home again. There were still awkward silences, still moments where the weight of the betrayal hung heavy in the air, but we moved through them. The kids, bless them, were resilient. And while things were far from perfect, they were learning that honesty, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. Then, one evening after dinner, Tom and I sat down again. It was the first time we had been alone together since the truth had come out. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice low, "for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make things right. For you, for the kids." I looked at him, my gaze steady. I wasn't sure what forgiveness looked like yet, but I knew that the road forward didn't have to be one of destruction. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," I said slowly, "but I'll be okay, and I'll make sure the kids are okay. That's all that matters." Tom nodded, the weight of his regret heavy in the air between us. "I know. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." It wasn't a perfect moment, and it wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. Life after that moment felt like a strange new beginning. It wasn't the fresh start I had imagined, the one where everything would magically go back to normal, but it was the best I could hope for in a world where my sense of trust had been shattered. I had spent so many years building my family, creating a home full of love and stability, and now I was tasked with rebuilding it from the rubble of betrayal. Tom's attempts to make amends were constant but uncomfortable. Every time he spoke about the future, about trying to fix what was broken, I could see the guilt weighing on him. He'd try to be there for the kids, trying to play the father he hadn't been when the truth came out. But there was an invisible wall between us that I didn't know how to tear down. I couldn't forget what he had done, not yet, and I wasn't sure I ever could. Still, I didn't want to be angry forever. Anger, as I'd learned, was exhausting. It was a heavy weight that weighed you down and kept you in the past. I didn't want to stay stuck in that place. I had my children to think about. I had myself to think about. And though it wasn't easy, I had to find a way to forgive, even if it meant doing so in my own time, on my own terms. The kids adjusted more easily than I expected. They were strong, more resilient than I had given them credit for. After the initial shock wore off, they settled into a new routine. Alex, ever the quiet observer, was more withdrawn, spending a lot of his time in his room, lost in his books. But I could see the way he looked at Tom when he thought no one was watching. The hurt was still there, lingering beneath the surface, but so was the hope. He wanted to believe in his father again, even if it was hard. Lily, on the other hand, threw herself into everything. She picked up new hobbies, tried new things, just to keep her mind busy. She was angry too, furious even, but she channeled it into laughter, into making everyone around her smile. She wasn't ready to forgive, and she didn't pretend to be. But she wasn't going to let this tear her apart either. She was strong in her own way. As for me, I learned that healing wasn't something that happened in an instant. It was something that took time. It took small moments of quiet strength. Like the way I felt when I watched my children laugh at something ridiculous on TV, or when I took a deep breath in the mornings, allowing myself to feel a sense of peace again. It took acknowledging the hurt, but also choosing to move forward despite it. I had to teach myself that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant finding a way to live with the truth. Months passed, and while things weren't perfect, they were better. I had found a new rhythm in my life. The house no longer felt like a place of constant tension. It had started to feel like a home again, a place where, yes, there was pain, but there was also love and laughter and the promise of new memories. The kids and I had learned how to live with the past, how to acknowledge the truth without letting it define us. Tom and I, too, found a new balance. He was trying. I could see that. He was doing the work, therapy, communication, and spending more time with the kids. But I knew it would never be the same. Some things can't be undone, and though I could see him trying to rebuild the trust he had broken, I wasn't sure I would ever be able to look at him in the same way. Maybe that was okay. Maybe that was the way things were meant to be. I had learned in the months that followed that sometimes the hardest thing in the world is not to forgive someone, but to forgive yourself. I had been so angry at Tom, but more than that, I had been angry at myself. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? I blamed myself for so long, thinking that somehow I had failed. But the truth was, I hadn't failed. I had been loyal, and I had given my best. It wasn't my fault that Tom had made choices that didn't honor that. Once I stopped blaming myself, I felt a weight lift. I began to embrace my own strength again. The same strength that had carried me through my illness, the same strength that had helped me stand tall when everything else seemed to crumble. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and I was teaching my children the same. Then came the day when I had to let go of something else. Tom had been trying, yes, but I knew I couldn't continue to live in a world where I was just a spectator in my own life. I had to take control of the narrative, and that meant making decisions that would protect my peace and my children's peace. I knew what I needed, even if it wasn't easy to admit. I sat down with Tom one evening, after the kids were asleep, and I finally said the words I had been avoiding. I think it's time for us to separate. For real. His face fell, and I could see the pain in his eyes. But there was also something else, something I hadn't expected. Relief. He knew it too. He knew that we couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. We had reached a place where it was better for both of us to move on, to give each other the space to heal fully, without the weight of our past mistakes hanging over us. I understand, he said quietly, and I'll always be here for the kids. I won't stop trying to make things right, but I get it. You need to find your peace. It wasn't easy. It wasn't what I had ever imagined. But as I walked away from that conversation, I felt lighter. There was a part of me that felt like I had reclaimed a piece of myself that had been lost for far too long. The truth had been painful, but in the end, it set me free. I had spent so much time holding on to the idea of what my life was supposed to be, of what my family was supposed to look like, that I had lost sight of what really mattered. It wasn't the facade of perfection. It wasn't the things we held on to just for the sake of keeping up appearances. It was the love, the resilience, and the strength to start over when everything else seemed lost. I had reclaimed my voice. I had reclaimed my life. And I had taught my children, through it all, that the most important thing in life wasn't avoiding the truth, but embracing it, even when it was painful. As I stood in the kitchen one morning, watching the sun pour through the windows and listening to the soft chatter of the kids around the table, I realized that life, while never perfect, had a way of healing itself when you let go of the things that weigh you down. It wasn't about what had been taken from me. It was about what I was choosing to give myself. Peace, strength, and the courage to move forward. The months following that conversation with Tom felt like a slow but deliberate march forward. There was no grand cathartic moment where everything fell into place. No instant forgiveness. No sudden wave of clarity. It was all small, steady moments, the kind that build quietly, like bricks in a foundation, until one day you realize you've constructed something solid. Tom and I settled into our new roles as co-parents. He would visit the kids on weekends, and I would make sure everything at home was running smoothly. There were still moments where old wounds would surface, where I would remember what he'd done, and it would hurt all over again. But I didn't dwell on it. I couldn't. The pain was real, but I had learned not to let it dictate my every move. I had something much more important to focus on now, my children and my own well-being. Alex and Lily were adjusting to this new version of their life too. They had their moments of sadness, of confusion, but they had both shown remarkable resilience. They were starting to understand the complexities of what had happened, even if they didn't fully grasp everything. I could see in Alex's eyes, though, that he was grappling with his own feelings about his father. He hadn't forgiven him yet, not completely, and I didn't expect him to. But in his own quiet way, he was learning to accept the changes. He was learning to live with the truth, just as I had. Lily, bless her heart, was a different story. She threw herself into everything she could. School projects, dance classes, even spending time with her friends, just trying to fill the space that Tom's absence had created. She was angry, and I knew that. She had every right to be. But she also had a fire in her, a determination to keep moving forward, to not let this one thing define her. And in that, I found a quiet strength. Her resilience was teaching me just as much as I was teaching her. As for me, I began to feel a shift within myself. The weight of betrayal, while never fully gone, started to lose its grip on my heart. It didn't define me anymore. I was not just the woman who had been wronged. I was a mother, a survivor, a woman who had weathered the storm and was still standing. I began to focus on things that made me happy. Small things, like reading books I had put down for years, walking in the park with the kids, and even indulging in some of the hobbies I had forgotten about when everything had felt so overwhelming. I realized that healing wasn't just about fixing the broken parts of me. It was about rediscovering the parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of other people's mistakes. One afternoon, as I was putting away some laundry, I noticed that the old, familiar feeling of dread had been replaced with something else, something lighter. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, waiting for the next lie to be exposed, for the next betrayal to come crashing down. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that was when it hit me. I had been so focused on the things I had lost, the trust, the family dynamic, the life I thought I had built, that I had forgotten to notice the things I had gained. I had gained strength. I had gained the courage to stand up for myself. And most importantly, I had gained a deeper connection with my children. I was teaching them that even when life throws you into the storm, you don't let it define you. You learn to weather it, to grow from it, and eventually, you'll find your way to calmer waters. I wasn't waiting for a grand gesture, for some moment of reconciliation where Tom would sweep in and fix everything. I wasn't holding my breath for an apology that could never erase what had been done. What I had realized was that forgiveness wasn't a gift you give someone else. It was a gift you give yourself, and I had forgiven myself. I had forgiven myself for not seeing the signs, for not protecting my heart the way I should have. I had forgiven myself for putting my trust in the wrong person. I wasn't going to let this define me anymore. Then came the unexpected moment. A moment that shook me in a way I didn't anticipate, one that I didn't see coming. It happened during one of Tom's visits, a few weeks after the separation had been finalized. He had come to pick up the kids for the weekend, and we were talking in the living room. The kind of conversation where the silence between words said more than the words themselves. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice quieter than usual. I looked up, surprised by the sudden sincerity in his tone. "What do you mean?" "I'm proud of how you've handled everything. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've done it. You've handled everything, and you've been there for the kids. I don't know if I could have done it." I felt my chest tighten at the unexpected praise. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a promise that things would be different. But it was something I hadn't expected. A recognition of my strength, even from him. "Thank you," I said quietly, the words feeling heavier than I anticipated. I wasn't sure if I could forgive him completely or if I ever would. But in that moment, I realized that I had reached a place where I didn't need him to fix anything for me. I had fixed myself, and that was enough. As the days went on, the house became more and more like a home again. It was filled with the noise of daily life. The kids bickering over who got the last piece of pizza, the sound of laughter at the dinner table, the small moments that made up our routine. I realized that while things weren't perfect, they were real, and that was all I needed. Tom would still visit, and we would coexist in the same space for the sake of the kids. But I no longer felt the weight of his presence in the same way. I had reclaimed my life, and with it, the strength to move forward, regardless of what had come before. The truth, as painful as it had been, had freed me. It had set me on a path where I didn't have to be defined by someone else's actions. I had chosen to live for myself, for my children, and for the future we were building. One where trust would no longer be a fragile thing, but a foundation that I could stand on, steady and sure. As I sat in the quiet of the evening, watching the kids settle down for bed, I realized that life was unpredictable. It wasn't the smooth, perfect journey we all hoped for, but it was mine, and I was moving forward, stronger than I had ever been before. I turned off the lights and closed the door, standing there for a moment, just listening to the soft hum of their breathing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The days began to blend together, but in the most comforting way. The harsh edges of the past, the jagged pain from everything I'd endured, began to soften. The house, once a reminder of the betrayal, started to feel like home again. A real home, not one built on lies and hidden secrets, but one where truth and growth took center stage. The kids seemed to sense the change too. They'd settled into a new rhythm with their father's visits, but there was no longer the tension that once hung over us all. They were learning how to love in the aftermath of hurt. It was messy, but it was real. And that, I realized, was the only kind of love worth having. The kind that didn't ignore the cracks, but embraced them as part of the story. I found myself spending more time with them, teaching. Alex how to cook the meals he liked. He'd been asking more lately. Helping Lily with her school projects. Even just sitting together, not saying much but being together. It was in those small, everyday moments where I found the most peace. It was when I stopped waiting for things to be perfect that I found what truly mattered. Connection, presence, and the small, quiet joys of just being together. There were still moments, though, where the pain of what had happened would resurface. It wasn't something that disappeared overnight, and I didn't expect it to, but I learned how to live with it, how to carry it without letting it crush me. One afternoon, after the kids had gone to bed, I was sitting on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon. When Tom came by to pick up some things, I wasn't expecting him to stop by that night. But there he was, standing on the steps, looking hesitant. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice tentative. I nodded, motioning for him to sit beside me. "What's on your mind?" "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Again. His voice trembled slightly, as though the apology was still hard for him to say, still not enough. "I know it doesn't change anything, and I know I can't take back the hurt. But I wanted you to know that I'm working on becoming a better person. For myself, and for the kids." I sat there for a moment, the cool evening breeze rustling the leaves around us. I felt no need to respond immediately, but I was grateful for his words. They weren't the magic fix I had hoped for all those months ago, but they were real. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the need to drag the past through the mud. I didn't need him to fix everything for me. I had already done that myself. "I appreciate that," I said softly. "And I know it's not easy. It wasn't easy for me either, but I'm getting there, one day at a time." He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and something else. Maybe hope, maybe guilt. "I hope you know that you did the right thing, for you." "And for the kids?" I nodded, feeling a strange sense of closure in that simple exchange. "We're all learning to move forward. Together, but separately. And that's enough for now." As the months turned into a year, I began to see the fruits of the seeds I had planted in that time. The kids were flourishing. Alex was finding his own voice, not just academically, but emotionally. He was more open, more willing to talk about his feelings. He and I had long talks, especially late at night, about things we never would have discussed before, about who we were, who we wanted to be, and how we were going to get there. Lily had become a little more grounded, though still full of fire. She had turned that energy into a passion for art, spending hours in her room, sketching and painting, using her work as a way to express everything she had kept inside. I watched her grow into someone strong and sure of herself, and I couldn't help but be proud. And as for me, I was learning to be okay with not having all the answers. I was learning to embrace the uncertainty of life, the ups and the downs, the moments of clarity and the moments of confusion. There were still times when the weight of what had happened threatened to pull me under. There were still days when I wanted to scream and throw things and curse the world for its cruelty. But there were also days where I felt at peace. Days where I felt, for the first time in a long time, that I had my life back. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without pain, but it was mine. One evening, about a year after everything had started to settle, I found myself sitting on the porch again, watching the sky turn pink and gold as the sun began to set. The kids were inside, their laughter filling the air, and for the first time I allowed myself to fully appreciate how far we had come. How far I had come. I wasn't the same woman I had been before all of this. I wasn't the naive woman who believed that everything could be fixed by love, by trust, by doing all the right things. No, I had learned the hard way that life wasn't that simple. People could hurt you, and sometimes the world didn't make sense. But I had also learned that I could survive it. I could pick up the pieces of my broken heart and put them back together, even when it felt impossible. The door opened behind me, and I turned to see Alex and Lily standing there, both with smiles on their faces. "What's up?" I asked, my voice warm. "We were just talking," Alex said, "and we wanted to thank you. For everything, for sticking with us, for showing us what it means to be strong." I felt my heart swell, my throat tightening with emotion. I had done something right, even if I had doubted myself 1,000 times. "You two are the strongest people I know. You've been through so much and you're still standing. That's what makes you strong." Lily bounced over and hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on us." I hugged her back, feeling a rush of love wash over me. "I'll never give up on you. I love you too. Always." The wind was picking up and the sky was growing darker, but I didn't want to move. Not yet. I wanted to savor this moment, this peace, this feeling of having made it through the storm and knowing that no matter what happened next, I had built something real. Something worth holding on to. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't have control over what the future held. But I knew one thing for sure. No one, not even Tom, could take away my truth. No one could silence me. And I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, fully, completely, and without regret. As I sit here, reflecting on everything that's happened, I can't help but think about how much we all underestimate the strength we have inside ourselves. It's funny, really. We go through life thinking we can control everything, that we can control the way things are supposed to be, the people we love, the things we trust. But then life throws something at you that shatters all of that, and you realize that the only thing you can truly control is how you choose to respond. I could have stayed in that hospital bed, clinging to the lies that Tom had told me, pretending that everything would magically fix itself. I could have spent years living in that place of bitterness, waiting for an apology that might never come. But I chose something else. I chose to reclaim my story, to take control of my own narrative. You know, when I first found out the truth, when I heard the whispers in my wardrobe and realized what had been happening behind my back, I thought I was going to crumble. I thought that would be the end of me. But that's the funny thing about hitting rock bottom. You don't stay there forever. You don't have to. It's painful, sure, but it's also the beginning of something else. Something new. Something real. I think we often look at the people around us and assume they have it all figured out. We see the smiles, the success, the moments where everything seems perfect. But the truth is, no one has it all together. We're all just trying our best, navigating the messiness of life, doing what we can with what we've been given. What I've learned, through all the pain and all the rebuilding, is that you can't control other people. You can't force someone to change, to apologize, to fix what they've broken. But you can choose how you respond. You can choose to rise, to heal, and to move forward. I didn't do it alone. I had my children, who showed me the power of resilience. I had the love of my family and friends, who reminded me that I wasn't just defined by what had happened to me. I had my own strength, the strength I had forgotten about for so long. And that's the most important thing, isn't it? The strength to pick yourself up, no matter how far you've fallen. The strength to keep going, even when the road ahead looks impossible. Because in the end, it's not the circumstances that define you. It's how you choose to face them. So, what's next for me? I don't know, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I've learned to let go of the need for everything to be perfect. Life is messy, and that's okay. I've learned that I don't need to have it all figured out. I just need to keep moving forward, one step at a time. I've learned to trust myself again, to trust that I'll make it through whatever comes my way. To those of you who've been through something similar, maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've been hurt in ways that seem impossible to heal from. I want you to know that it's okay to feel broken. It's okay to take time to grieve, to be angry, to be confused. But also, know this. You're not defined by what's happened to you. You're defined by how you choose to rise above it, by how you choose to live your truth, no matter how hard it is. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that nobody can silence your truth but you. Nobody can take away your power unless you let them. You have the strength to reclaim your story, to rebuild your life, and to move forward with grace, even when the road is hard. As I look out at the world now, I see a future full of possibilities. I see a future where I'm not bound by the mistakes of others, where I can stand tall and proud, knowing that I've survived and thrived through the hardest moments of my life. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I do know that I'm ready to face it, whatever it is. And that, my friends, is the greatest gift I could ever give myself. Would you have done what I did? Would you have found the strength to rebuild your life, to rise above the hurt, to forgive yourself and move forward? Tell me in the comments. If you're going through something difficult right now, I want you to know that you're not alone. Take a moment to reflect on your own journey, on the strength that lies within you, and remember, no matter what, you have the power to choose how you respond. You have the power to reclaim your story. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found strength in my story, if it has helped you in any way, please consider subscribing. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, remember, the truth will set you free, but it's up to you to claim it.